In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight, our special guest is Dr. Robert Worthington. Dr. Robert Worthington is a resident of Columbia, Maryland, is a seasoned aeronautical data analyst. His work is crucial for safe and efficient navigation, flight planning, and management of airspace as he manages, validates, and enhances aeronautical data. Dr. Worthington's commitment to holistic youth development is not just a passion, but a unique approach he brings to the table. He founded a basketball camp and mentoring programs that go beyond the norm, designed to help young people recognize their inherent potential. His comprehensive approach provides support that addresses not just career-related needs, but also personal, social, and emotional well-being. Dr. Worthington's academic journey is marked by his graduation from Walden University Consulting Capstone Program, a highly competitive course of study. This program has provided him with a solid foundation and extensive experience in consulting, thereby enhancing his skills and knowledge in the field. Dr. Worthington's academic background is a testament to his dedication to the field. He holds a Master's of Business Administration with a focus on aviation from Lynn University and a Bachelor of Science in Professional Aeronautics from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. With over 30 years of aviation experience, Dr. Worthington has developed a strong expertise in the field. His career encompasses positions in high-stakes environments, including air traffic control, airport management, aviation safety, and public service. Notably, locations where he has worked include the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida, home of the U.S. Space Program and the Space Shuttle, the National Air Traffic Control Center at the Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and the Federal Aviation Administration National Flight Data Center headquarters, also in Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Robert Worthington. Hello, sir.
Hey, good evening, Mr. King. Thank you for that introduction.
Oh, yes, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Well, no, it is excellent to have you here on the show. Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we get into the show?
No, you covered it quite well. I was actually going to take some notes and write some of those things down that I can use them next time I speak somewhere else. You did a fantastic job of covering my career, and I appreciate it.
Oh, yes, sir. No problem. You know, the thing I want to start with is I want to start off with what you do as an aeronautical analyst, because as we talked before, I just think that the one thing that's so captivating is that, you know, and it still left me wondering, like, how many people look like you are in this field? So what first sparked your interest in aeronautics?
Again, that's a long story ago. Star Trek. I was a Star Trek kid. We all remember that spaceship flying through the space and that introduction to boldly go where no man has gone before at the beginning of the Star Trek series. So that was my introduction to aerospace and my fascination with aviation. I continued to be fascinated by it. I joined the United States Air Force, and my first aviation job was air traffic controller in 1991. And that career path started me on that journey of dealing with flights. And again, just it didn't resolve my interest. It actually just sparked it even more. So as I progressed in my career, I went on to work at different places, as you've noted, and continued to be a controller until I switched positions and became a air traffic, I guess it was titled air traffic manager. I developed the flight line driving program at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station for the flight shuttle landing facility at that time. And from there on to the Mike Maroney Aeronautical Center, which is the air traffic control training facilities located there. And that's probably going to be in the news a lot these days because air traffic control has been spotlighted. So when you combine all of that experience and stuff as becoming an analyst and what you do in a daily capacity, it depends on what area you're focusing in as an analyst. There's sometimes where we have to collect data. We have to make sure that the data we're looking at is accurate, and that requires source, whether it's the airport manager, whether it's the air traffic control towers, whether it's airway safety. All those people are part of that coordination chain that you have to go through. And then you get that information, you have to validate it, because analyzing data could be for safety reasons. It could be for searching for trends. So all those things have a capacity of what you're trying to do as an analyst, and it all works together. But it's an exciting job. It changes every day, and it's very exciting.
Wow. Can you describe your role as an aeronautical analyst in layman's terms?
In layman's terms, I collect information to resolve or solve problems.
Point blank and period.
Yes.
So, just in doing the work that you do, can you tell us, how meticulous do you have to be when it comes to collecting this data? Because it sounds like its usage is like really, really core.
Right. It's critical information, whether it's being used at the runways, at the airports themselves for their particular information, which informs pilots or air traffic controllers after they're getting the data. For instance, the length of a runway, the width of a runway or a taxiway, the landing height, the elevation of that runway. Those things are very important and they're very precise. So you have to be very meticulous in what you're doing. You have to validate and verify the information. So it goes through a number of different hands before it's actually gone out to where the public, when I'm including public, I'm saying pilots or airports, can utilize the data. So it's very important to be meticulous.
Mm. What was the most challenging project you've worked on in aviation?
I believe the most challenging project I worked on was being tasked with developing a flight line driving program at the Space Center. Because at the Space Center in Cape Canaveral, you have both civilian and military personnel there. The Cape Canaveral Space Command's commander was an Air Force colonel. So therefore, those rules were the governing rules of the landing facility, but it also had to have civilian drivers on the flight line. So we had to develop a flight line driving program that was fundamentally sound enough to make sure all the drivers could actually operate vehicles around a movement and non-movement area, which is critical to making sure you don't FOD. It's obvious to get caught into your tires driving your vehicle. There were no FOD checkpoints when we started the program. Teaching the light gun signals that allow vehicles to operate on the airfield, and the control tower may fire a gun signal at them, which is just a light. It could be a flashing white light, a flashing red light, or a green light, which allows them to move in an area, leave an area, or hold their position. And they have to understand what those things mean. So all the drivers had to be trained on that. And I think in the span of about 90 days, I think we trained over 300 drivers to drive on the flight line. That was very challenging because of the different rules.
Mm. So how has aerospace technology evolved since you began your career?
Again, that's twofold, because in air traffic control, we had this thing where writing your flight strips. The flight strips are writing the information about an airplane coming in. Initially, you wrote those strips by hand. You actually wrote the call sign of the airplane. It could be Charles 17. It could be an F-15 jet. It could be flying out of Baltimore, BWI Airport, flying into Orlando, Florida, and you write all that information by hand. Now you basically type in the ID for the airplane and it prints all that information out for you, including the entire flight the aircraft is going to fly with any stops they may make. And it's all digitized and it comes out in an automatic flight plan. That was probably the biggest difference, but the radar tracking devices are what we call debrights or radars. Those have changed over time for air traffic control. As an analyst, we have calculations that we have to do. And there were times where you had to have that calculator on your desk and you will calculate some of these formulas yourself. But now they're built into the database and you can actually put in information and the database calculation will calculate them for you. So certainly that's made the job easier, but you still have to put the correct data in there to get the correct answer out of there.
So what kind of math is it that you guys use?
What type of, I'm sorry, what was the question?
What type of math is it that you guys use?
What type of math? Well, again, calculations are, just simple algebra is a calculation where you're actually formulating different type of calculations and getting an outcome. That would probably be the simplest form to describe it. But you have to obviously be able to think quickly, solve problems, deal with stressful situations, and understand that your job is critical. So you're going to be checked and rechecked again. So those are important aspects of the job.
So what innovation in flight analysis excite you most today?
Well, again, as we are entering this phase of redeveloping and reimagining the NAS, the National Aerospace Center system, we had Next Gen for probably the past 10 to 12 years. And Next Gen was supposed to be the next aspect of aviation and utilizing all of the technology to advance, whether it's training controllers, training flight line drivers, training analysts. All those things were going to be in the Next Gen program to improve. And now we're in the age of AI. So now that innovation is taking another jump and another step. I'm excited to see where that's going to go. I certainly believe that people are still going to be required to input certain information to generate the technology to get the output you want. But the innovation is exciting. It's almost unlimited, and it's going to be really, really exciting to see what happens and what comes next.
So what excites you most about AI?
About AI. I'm not an AI specialist, but again, looking at it from the aviation standpoint, there are times where we've seen training technology used, and now you're going to a flight simulator when we used to actually do what we call static labs. You would walk the airplanes around by hand, everybody would walk around. Now there's these static labs that can actually, they're automated. They move the planes, change the direction, change the type. They can map your entire airport of a particular airport, and your controllers or airport personnel can be trained to the specific details and restrictions at your airport. That's very exciting because now you get to go out there and talk to a plane, or if you're a driver driving on a flight line, operate a vehicle, and you're not actually doing it, you're in a simulator. But all of that airport looks like your airport. Is all designed for you. It trains you. I think that type of technology and innovation is going to help limit mistakes. It's going to give drivers and controllers more confident to deal with the things they're having to deal with on a daily basis. And I think it's going to reduce errors and mistakes.
So with that though, do you figure that can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So do you figure that with the advancement of the AI and and all the things that is capable of doing, when you guys are training with that in the simulator, is the simulator automatically also programmed for like what they say could be like the hiccups and all that other kind of stuff to
again, I'm not a AI specialist, so I'm not really sure how they handle the AI, but if the simulator itself is programmed to what they call scenarios. For instance, I want to have a scenario where if you're driving a vehicle on the flight line and you have an airplane that's coming in on bound to land, and your scenario is that the controller told you as a vehicle to go ahead and cross the runway, but you see the airplane coming in. So do you follow those directions or do you not follow those directions? Do you ask the controller to repeat it? So you can program those things in. It can actually happen. And then you can't be on autopilot way like, I'm just going to drive across. You have to use your common sense and not do that. And it works the same way as your controller. You have a controller and you have a controller coming in, and the controller could have been cleared to land for an airplane coming to land, and he sees a vehicle come across the runway. If he sees a vehicle, the controller clearing the land, should he just land? Or should he should he initiate that go around his own and just take back off and like, hey, Tower, there's a vehicle on the runway there, and then you'll find out someone made a mistake.
Okay.
So there has to be some usage of you have to use some common sense where everything is not going to be able to operate exactly the way it's in.
So it's
I
like
got to make a change the direction here, and that happens.
So it's like a video game.
In essence, yes, it's similar to a video game. Yes.
Mm. So, did you ever dream of being a pilot yourself?
I did not. My dream, again, from early on and being a Trekkie and watching Star Trek, was to go in space. And as I progressed into my career, I wanted to be a scientist on the space station. I still have that dream, by the way. So I hope to one day reach space on the space station in some type of capacity as a scientist.
Dr. Worthington, I'm going to tell you this. I promise you, you remind me of Neil deGrasse.
He's one of my favorite people. I listen to him a lot.
You remind me of Neil deGrasse. And, whenever, because I read his books. I haven't watched any of his podcasts, because I think he does a podcast with his son. But he
does.
Neil deGrasse is fascinating.
I think so as well. Yes.
How did your work contribute to national or global aviation safety?
Well, again, for analysts, you're having certain areas of responsibility. Your area of responsibility could include 5, 6, 7, 8 states. It could be international. Currently, like I can have areas of responsibility in the Midwest, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and all those areas of airspace control. I'm responsible for that aviation data. So therefore, that's my area of responsibility. But that can easily change. I could have Hawaii, Alaska, and California. So therefore, it's broken down into different regions, and different analysts have a responsibility for those regions. So as a controller, when I control the aircraft, again, your responsibility is to the airport that you're working at, whether that's in Florida, whether it's in California, whether it's in Guam. Those areas are all different. That airspace is all different. You have to learn it all over again. And you have to make sure that you're well briefed on the rules for that particular area, because they may be different.
So, what's one misconception people have about aeronautical analysts?
Oh, I'm not really sure. I don't know if people know what an aeronautical analyst is. I remember people having a misconception that air traffic controllers were the people that marshal the airplanes in. They had the flags moving them around, and that wasn't true. So when they hear aeronautical analysts, I think they think airplane. I believe they believe airport, but they're not really sure what the analyst does. And again, they look at the fact that we broke it down earlier, that basic foundational collect information, make sure the information that goes back out to the public, including pilots and air traffic control towers, are to the best of your ability as accurate as possible, because lives can depend on it.
Have you mentored young professionals in the aerospace field?
Absolutely. As you move up and you spend enough time in the aviation field, you have to have someone that like I went through training when I became an aviation person. And as I went through my career, whether it's a controller or airport manager or what have you, you have training, and someone train you. And there's going to be a time where you're the senior person and you're going to have to train someone. So we've all gone through that. And again, I've trained a number of people, and I tried to make sure that they understood the task. And the task is that you're not looking for a shortcut. I remember talking to a young person once about air traffic control. I used to walk over to the Air Traffic Control Academy daily and just take a walk around the campus. I'm walking by, and we went into a class one day, and there were a group of students that were there. And of course, it's a very stressful school, and they were stressed out about it. And someone, we're talking to the guys like, hey, you got to study. You just got to keep studying. And so the guy like, well, how do you get through here? How do you get through this school? It was like, well, here's what you do. You study all day. You study all night. You go to sleep, you dream about air traffic control, and you start controlling airplanes in your sleep. If you're doing that, you're learning your job. That's how you do this job. But again, it's a fantastic job. Some people believe that it's stressful. And like anything, someone doing your job, they're not knowledgeable of it. They can be stressed out about it. But if you learn the job and you're doing what you're supposed to do, it requires a lot of work. It requires dedication and commitment. But it's a very challenging job, but I also believe it's a very rewarding job.
So what legacy do you hope to leave in the world of aeronautics?
For me, I think it goes back to the question you asked me earlier. How many people who look like me do I see doing this job? And that's changed at different times. In the military, I thought people who look like me were, pretty prominent. You would see them all over the place in the aviation career field. In the civilian career field, I think that number is different. I think obviously and stuff, we know the numbers and stuff. The data shows that it's a white male dominated field in air traffic control. I'm not sure the overall numbers for aviation completely, but minorities and stuff are still the minority. So there's not a lot of people who look like us. I try to go and speak at schools and different events that have young kids in particular, and areas and stuff that kids who may not have opportunity to speak to a controller or someone that's a professional in aviation. And I always try to give them the same message. Don't let the challenge be a deterrent. We can achieve and accomplish anything we want to. We're willing to put that work in to do it. I want to be a living example of that. And I overcome different things. And I tell them all the time, it's not about smart. It's about having the willingness to work and put that effort in, and you can overcome it. And that's what I've done. And I want that to be the legacy.
So what is your motivation?
Oh, goodness. What's my motivation? I believe, again, when I started in aviation, the motivation was obviously I was always interested in aviation. As I moved up and I progressed in my career and worked at different locations and attained a little bit of success in those jobs, my motivation was to, again, leave that thing that I shouldn't be unique. It should be more people like me coming forward. And there are a lot of people who look like us, just not enough. We're still a minority. But a lot of the kids who look up to us, I want them to understand that it's not something that you should not aspire to. It's not like, oh, you're so exceptional, I can't do that. I'm just like you. You can do it. And that motivates me. I want to be able to continue to walk in some certain schools or certain areas and talk to young people and let them know that I should not be the exception. All of you guys can do this same thing. It just takes some effort. And so therefore it keeps me motivated. I want them to see that, this is not a one-time thing or someone is smart or they have certain degrees or whatever. You can do the exact same thing with effort and hard work.
Let's do word association. I'm gonna give you a word and I want you to tell me the first thing that pops in your mind.
Okay.
Plane.
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 Controller.
Air.
Flight.
Space.
Star Trek.
Fly.
Fly, meaning fly or fly like insect?
Fly.
Flying. Aviation.
Controller.
Challenging.
Data.
Data. Accurate.
Read.
Reading.
Read.
Like reading a book.
Yes. Yes.
Read. It's a passion. I love reading, so I'm passionate about it.
People.
People. Different.
Pilot.
Determined.
Analyst.
Analyst. Committed.
Of all those words, which one is the most important to you? What means the most to you and why?
I would say probably commitment, because again, we're all going to face different challenges. And if you're not committed to a task, obstacles are going to be put in your way, whether they're physical obstacles or there may be something that you're not as good at it as you thought you were, and now you're facing this challenge. How committed you are to overcoming that challenge? I think a commitment to your goals, to the task at hand, to your family, to the goals you've set for yourself. Those things all require you to be committed.
Let's transition over to your work as an author.
Okay.
So what inspired you to start writing?
What inspired me to start writing? Aging, getting older, reflecting, reflecting on the life you've lived, the things that were important to you. And my first book was a memoir, and it's titled "In My Brother's Shadow," and that all had significance for me. I was debating what type of book I wanted to write, but again, I thought about where I was and where I'm at in this stage of my life and how I got there. That interests me in my own personal journey and my own personal story. And so I decided to put pen to paper and start writing it.
Mm. Which of your books feels the most personal to you and why?
Well, I believe In My Brother's Shadow is the most personal. That's the one that's already published. Flight Path, A Journey with a Black Air Traffic Controller, is scheduled to be published in the fall of this year. And again, both of those are personal stories, but I believe In My Brother's Shadow tells the story of the relationship I had with my older brother and how important he was to me. And it was part of a way of developing my character, who I was. I wanted to be better than him at something. He was a fantastic student. He was a great basketball player. And I felt the challenge to want to be better than him in those things. And I usually wasn't, but that was the challenge. The goal was to get better, to evolve, to get to where I was with him. And so that story in that book even helped me understand some things about myself that I wasn't aware of at the time, but in researching and writing the book and discussing it with family members and friends and coaches and stuff and other associates, I opened up some doors that I kind of like never opened before. And I opened up a direction of where I was going and why I went in that direction that I wasn't really sure about previously.
Right. So when you were writing, especially when you were writing that particular memoir,
Mm-hmm.
like were you in a particular place, just in your life where you just wanted to write that? Or was it just one of those things that you said,
Right.
I'm going to do this project eventually?
The interesting thing about that is I was probably at the busiest point in my life. I was still working as an analyst. I was in the middle of completing my dissertation for my doctorate degree, which is over 300 pages. And one of the questions you get asked in your dissertation journey or your doctoral journey is, what is your why? Why are you doing this? Because it's going to become so challenging at some point. I mean, a lot of people just don't make it through the journey. You have to know why you're doing this, because you may have to use that to reinforce your efforts at times. And in asking myself that why question, I had a lot of questions for myself about the journey I had taken, about the impact of certain situations that had happened in my life, and why I made a decision about doing one thing versus doing another thing. So those were all motivating factors to push me towards writing the book.
Mm-hmm. Wow. How do you balance technical expertise with storytelling?
I try to just be myself. I tell the stories as if I'm just having a conversation. And even in my writing, as I was writing my memoir, I sat down at my computer, and each day I would put on certain music, and I would put on music from the time period I was writing about, which would spark memories. But it would also put me in a mode of like, yeah, I remember this, and I got a little bit more details in it. That was my process. It was my process of writing my dissertation and my doctoral studies as well. So it was something that I used to my advantage, and it worked.
Wow. What themes do you return to often in your writing?
What things do I return to often in my writing? I think if you have seen the In My Brother's Shadow book, you would see the theme of basketball, because basketball was such an important factor in my life from the time I was a little boy until even now. I mean, I'm still very, very passionate about basketball, and I learned so many life lessons through playing basketball in a team sport. You're dealing with different personalities and different people. Sometimes you're dealing with someone that may be better than you at a particular task. And do you get intimidated by that? Are you inspired by it? Are you challenged by it? Are you going to overcome it? I had coaches over the years that taught me lessons that I've used to this day, and I've learned so much from them. And I've told them that in conversations about, I remember something that happened, whatever these number of years ago, and I was really upset about it at that time. But when I reflect back on it now, it changed the direction of my life. I really, don't know what I would have done if you were to say, you know what, do whatever you want. Just do what you want. There's no accountability. There's no consequences for your actions. Do whatever you want. That wasn't my experience. I had accountability and I had consequences. And I think it changed the trajectory of my life.
So, do you see writing as a form of activism?
I do. And again, in my brother's shadow memoir, not only do I talk about the relationship between my brother and I and the journey and the path that I took, I also talk about a message to people who look like us. A lot of times, and I tell people, I say, obviously, we're going to have some different opinions on this topic, and it's not going to apply to every single person. But when I started running my youth basketball league, and I had over 68 total teams, and every team had 10 to 14 kids on it. So I had a lot of kids come through there, and I dealt with a lot of parents, most of them minority kids. And the thing that always kept catching my attention in a negative way was the lack of accountability. We weren't holding ourselves accountable. We weren't holding our kids accountable. And I know there's a lot of things that people say that we have to deal with as people of color. And most of it is not a lie. We have to deal with a lot. And I try to tell the students I dealt with, the athletes I dealt with, that there are a lot of obstacles that are going to be out there. And unfortunately and stuff, that's our reality. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, but there are obstacles that are put out there in front of us. But here's what I do know. A lot of obstacles that are put in front of people, when it's stereotypes driving those obstacles, they have a certain way of believing and thinking about us. So they put those obstacles very, very low. If your goals are to fly high, they don't impact you because they expect you to fly low or to jump low or travel low or move low. If you're moving high, you're trying to soar, those obstacles that are down low are not going to impact you.
Right.
Oh, they're still there. That doesn't mean you don't notice them. I could see them, although I'm passing by them. And I try to tell people that, and I try to hold myself to that account, the people that are in my circle to that account. And again, I think if we're more accountable about what we're doing and what we're not doing, it's not going to change whether someone else sees us in a certain light or not, or what they're doing or what they want to say about us. But what are we doing for us? That's more important.
Right. So do you think as you look at that particular point, especially from the lens of, when you say you use your writing as activism, do you see that as maybe creating more teaching moments to make things that much easier, or is it just simply to look at the stereotype, use it as a motivation, and keep moving?
It's more of a reminder that we have a history. We know what we've had to overcome in this country. A lot of times when I wrote in my memoir, I went back to my time growing up in the projects and just remembering and reminiscing about it's the projects. And in fact, it's called Griffin Park. It was torn down this year, so it's no longer there now, but it'd been there for a long time. It was actually the first community in Orlando, Florida that allowed Black families to live in. We didn't know the historical aspect of it when we lived there. We didn't know it was the projects. It's just where we lived. We didn't think about it as being poor, but it didn't define you either. It didn't lock you into a behavior of you're always going to live here, or you can't do better because you're here. It did not define who you were because you grew up in a low-income community. And that's the attitude that we should all have. Now, we're going to have things that happen to us. The tragedy that I address in my book with my older brother, who was an A student. He was a scoring champion in the city of Orlando, one of the best basketball players in the city at the time, had never had a speeding ticket before, a jaywalking ticket, had never been in trouble in his life. He had one horrible decision, and it's cost him 40 years in prison. He's been in prison for the rest of his life. We don't always get second chances. And we can make a mistake that could be a catastrophic mistake. It may not give us another opportunity to make that mistake again. So we have to start being more accountable for what we're doing. I know that's difficult as parents. We see what our children have to deal with. We see what some of our siblings have to deal with, our friends or whatever. But if we're not holding ourselves to a higher standard, no one else is going to do it better than we would do it for ourselves.
But let me ask you this. For the kids that you grew up with in that area, are you still connected or talk to any of those people?
I talked to a lot of them. I actually, in the book, I talk about what's called, we used to call it back in the day, the big boys. And there was a big boy. His name was, Pee Wee. His name was Alvin, but we always called him Pee Wee. And he was an older kid than I was, and he took me under his wings. And he would hang out with me, and I would walk around with him. And I kind of felt a little elevated by being with the big boys. So I sent him a copy of my memoir, and I asked him what he thought about it. He said, I felt like I was living in Griffin Park all over again, and thank you for just illuminating that. And I asked him, I said, I got a question for you. I've always wondered this. And I said, can you tell me why you picked me? Why was I the kid that you want to walk around with and whatever? He goes, I don't know why I did that. It was just something that God put on my heart, and I did it, but look at you now. And I was like, well, I just want you to know I'm forever grateful, because I've always felt a need to, I can't let him down. He took the time to walk around with me, so I can't let him down. So I felt like I had that extra push to help me out. So I certainly talked to some of the guys. And again, when I wrote the book, I tried to talk to a lot of them. As life has passed us on, some people are no longer here with us. But a lot of my coaches, former teammates, I reached out to a lot of those people.
Oh, man, that had to be exciting.
It was very exciting. And it coincided with my 40th year high school reunion.
Oh,
so
God.
So I got a chance to go back, and I'm there. And at the time the book is coming out, and it was surreal. We also had a 40th year, 50th year, I think, basketball reunion. So some players that played way before I was at the school were there, but almost all of the coaches from 1975 to 2025 attended this event, and it was incredible. It was incredible.
Wow. I still have yet to go to a class reunion.
You got to go. You connect with people, and you see folks, and it sometimes it's really weird to be out of contact with people that you hadn't seen in years, but because of that connection from high school or before high school, you start talking with them as if you never missed a beat, you never missed a year, and it's been decades. It's a fantastic experience and stuff. Certainly worth the attendance.
How has your work been received by different communities?
I think for the most part, it's been received. I've spoken at middle schools and urban communities. I've spoken with middle schools and rural communities. I've spoken to middle schools here in Columbia, Maryland. I went back to Orlando, Florida, and spoke at my old high school about aviation careers and professional day. I've spoken at Fortune 500 companies about leadership. So I've had a variety of different audience that I've spoken with. And I think it was pretty well received. And I think the only negative I've ever received from my book part of it, as being an author, was having one of the a brother of one of the guys I talk about in the book didn't agree with my assertion that his brother may have lost a one-on-one basketball game in the 70s. So I'm not really sure why he was so passionate about that, but he was.
Oh, man. What's your writing process like? Structured or spontaneous? What is it?
I'm an aviation professional, so it's structured. I have my outline for my current book, Flight Path, was over 60 pages. Just the outline, because I broke the outline down into not just a strictly outline of chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and sub points, but the year that I worked the job and the people I encountered and worked in those years in the locations I worked at, and I put the years down, the people I remembered, why they were significant, and I broke it all down into year and then came back up. So when you get into then writing the book, I mean, you have a lot of information there already. So it's basically going back in and you're filling in the blanks now because you have so much information. And even at times, the information sparks a memory that you may not have remembered. So, and I've interviewed and talked to maybe 24 former controllers that I've worked with, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to writing that book, or finishing that book.
Are there any authors who deeply influenced your style?
I don't. I mean, I'm a reader, so I really enjoy reading. But I don't necessarily believe I was influenced in my writing because I didn't see myself as a writer. That was something that just recently came in the last couple of years. And I actually went to my first authors event in the spring of this year. It was my first time actually going there. When I'm not actually going to hear an author speak, I'm actually going there and I'm speaking as an author. It was my first time doing that this year, and it was a different experience for me. Obviously, I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next one I'm going to. I believe is next month in Washington D.C. But I try to, I like to read history. I like to read books that are educational. I like to read books that teach me something that I may have thought I knew the answer to, but we're learning now that our history is his history, or his story, and not really history. So you got to get a deeper dive into what you're learning and what you're reading about. So I enjoy reading those type of books. I enjoy autobiographies. I really enjoyed the Obama books. I recently just read a book about I think they did a movie that Leonardo DiCaprio was in about the Native Americans that hit the oil and became rich. I can't think of the name of it now, but I think they made it into a movie, and I'm actually in the middle of reading that right now. But it was just horrific what happened to these people and how most of their land and wealth was stolen from them. And of course, now we're living at a time where people don't want history told at all.
What do you think about that?
What do I think about people? Well, the fortunate thing is that we can all read and write now. The information is not hidden from us. We can go find our own information. So although some people may have a desire to hide certain things, they may be in a position of power to be able to delete certain things. The information is out there, and we have the capability of searching it ourselves and doing our own due diligence to finding things out that can't be hidden forever.
But I think is that deleting part that's the problem, because
Deleting?
I think that when you think about it, you're right that some people, some of us can write, these things, and we can go back and say we can rewrite it, but there may be some points that were there that may have been missed.
Right. Well, if we can come from a history where for nearly 400 years it was illegal for us to learn how to read and write, and now for 200 and some years we've had the education to do so, we can certainly find information when there's a homegrown demagogue trying to hide it from us or delete it from us. So I think we'll be fine.
Right. How do you use storytelling to challenge stereotypes?
Well, I in my office, and I wish I should have done this podcast from there, I have the Ruby Ridges poster in the back. And I usually put it at every place where I work. I put it in my office because she walked to school escorted by FBI agents and law enforcement to a class that people did not want her to attend. A little girl, 8 or 9 years old, had the courage and the fortitude to get through all of that hatred and walk to school. Although she was guarded, her head was always up. She looked straight ahead. She had her books, and she still learned to do what she was required to do. Those are the stories that I use to tell a story. I tell kids today, you have a computer, you have a tablet, you have a cell phone, and and you still have an excuse not to learn and study, there's no excuse for that. There are times, and you know this and stuff, that the most technical thing we dealt with coming up in our school time was star 69. and 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 we've probably all gotten trapped on a star 69 where you call somebody and like, oh man, you hang up real quick, and their mother or father star 69 you and call you back. So that was our first introduction to technology, catching you doing something you wasn't supposed to do. Now you can be tracked. I can pull you up anywhere you're at, and I know where your vehicle's at, where you're at. I know how much time you was on your computer, your cell phone. It's the technology is different. There's no excuses anymore.
Right.
Even when you have someone trying to delete things from you or belittle your accomplishments or take away from what you've done, there's no excuses. They can try to do those things. But the fact that we had our ancestors overcome years of never being able to learn to read or write, and they still overcame. We have no excuses.
Yeah. What advice would you give aspiring authors from underrepresented backgrounds?
To remember that your story is probably fascinating. You probably had to overcome so much from the background and the environment that you came out of that your story would probably be fascinating to someone who doesn't understand what motivates a person from that environment to overcome, to achieve. So therefore, I would tell them to think about this. When you read the most fascinating book you've ever read, what's caught your imagination about that particular book? And imagine someone reading your story for the first time. I had that question asked me by a middle school boy at Greenville Middle School here in Maryland. And he asked me a question that kind of caught me off guard. They had notes and they had taken questions from my book. The teacher had a earlier copy of the book, and she read it to the students, and they actually had notes they had taken about it. So when they came to listen to me speak about the book, they had questions already prepared to ask me questions about the book. And they were saying, and he asked me like, "Oh, Dr. Worthington, I have a question for you." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And he's going to ask me a basketball question or something like that. He goes, "Do you ever feel guilty about your success overcoming your family's struggles from the beginning?"
Oh.
And I was like, "Whoa, how old are you again? Where did you get that question from?" And I had this. It stuck me for a minute, and I was like, "No, I wear it as a badge. I had to overcome that, and just like where you're coming from right now." And he had told me that he wanted to go to college and he was going to be the first person in his family to go to college. I was like, I've been that person where I'm the first person to graduate from high school, the first person to go to college. I don't look at it as I'm ashamed of it. I look at it as a badge of honor. I'm representing my family. I'm changing the legacy of my family's name. And that's not challenging to me. That's the challenge. That's what I want to do. And I've accepted it.
Wow.
So, yeah. That's what I would tell someone that's writing their story. Let your story be as fascinating to everyone else as their story may be to you.
So what if, like a lot of people that want to write, at least they think they do, what is it that you think that maybe they should learn or should know most when it comes to actually putting together an actual complete work?
Complete work. It's going to take some effort, even if it's your story. Even with your story you're telling, it has to be interesting to the person that's reading it. I can't tell the story to you as if you know my story. So I have to be able to develop that story, and I have to be creative with it. I have to be able to have someone proofread my writing, edit my writing, make suggestions that I may not agree with, but talk me into them. So it's a process. And there are times where you have to write when you don't feel like writing. There are times I woke up at night because I had an idea and I wanted to write it down. So I would just record it and then send it to myself in a message. And then the next day I could write about it. Once you decide to go on that journey until completion, it's going to be an all-time journey. You're going to write every day, even the days you don't feel like writing. You have to sit down and do some writing. and then realize that it's not an easy journey, and it's not going to get finished until you finish it. So if you give yourself a day or 2 days or 3 days, that can become 2, 3 weeks or 3 or 4 months. So you have to try to overcome that urge to do that and stay committed to what you're doing, and understand and stuff that if that's the goal or the path you've chosen, then it may be worth traveling. So you're gonna have to travel it, and it's not gonna be a smooth road. It's gonna be bumpy, but at the end, it's gonna be worth it. I've really gotten such feedback on my memoir, and it's I've been really it's been really well received, in particular from the people who know the story. I'm very proud of that.
Well, and as you was mentioning about having to write and so forth, I'm gonna tell you, when I first sat down to write my book, when the creative juices was flowing, I could just write, and everybody's got this little thing, you have your little thing that you do within. But when I don't have, when there's no creativity coming out, I can't write. I don't want to force it, because then I think that I'm going to put something in the story that's probably just going to be all kind of crazy. But so have you ever had those kind of moments when you were writing?
Sure. And again, I had a stop journey with my memoir. When I started writing the book, I had not started writing my dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
So once I started writing the dissertation, which again was nearly 300, I think it was 258 pages total, my dissertation, and I had to defend it orally twice. I had to stop writing. So for nearly a year, I just shelved the book. I stopped writing. When I came back to it, I had probably had over 200 pages written, but I had no idea what I had written down. So I had to I was like, I know I have 200 pages, but I don't know what it says. I don't remember. I basically brain dumped it all, and I'd gotten so engulfed in the journey of the doctoral study that I didn't, I knew the gist of the story and what I wanted to write about, but I had no idea what I'd written. So I sat back down, and I remembered a point that I wanted to write about, something that stood out in my mind. And what stood out in my mind was the day I found out my brother had gotten arrested. So I put that story back down on paper again, and I try to be as descriptive as possible with that particular story. And as I'm writing it, it's bringing up more memories. And as I wrote that story, it eventually became the introduction to my memoir. And then it actually led to all the other stories. So I took that story and made it the introduction, because it was the ending to the beginning of a journey. And that journey was me. And as I've traveled and gone to different places and stuff around the world, I've used that same motivation to say, you know what? I don't know if my brother's ever going to see these places in his lifetime. So I have to take a look at them and reminisce about them for him. That's the mindset I get in when I'm writing. There's a chance that I may write a story that someone is going to read and see, and they may not feel like they can do this. And I'm going to tell them, like, you know what? There was a time I got a C in English. So again, don't think this outstanding student you're dealing with here. It wasn't my favorite subject. Math was and science was, but not writing, not English. But you overcome that challenge when there's a goal that you want to achieve. Have these things that says, you know what? Look at it, it's like, what? What was I thinking about? Because you have those blocks where you're not writing coherently and stuff, so you kind of make some mistakes, or your thoughts are all over the place, and then you just rewrite it. You go back through and like, okay, what was I trying to say there? Okay, skip down a little bit and rewrite this, and you start the story over. So I certainly had those days, but I tried to maintain the discipline to say, I'm going to write every night. How productive that writing is going to be, I don't know, but I'll correct it tomorrow. But I'm going to write every night.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Let's transition over to your work in community engagement and your mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, what drives your commitment to community work?
Because probably going back to that very story I just told you about one of the big boys taking an interest in me and how it made me feel. And I felt a little differently from all other little boys and stuff that were my age group because one of the big boys had taken an interest in me. So from that, and then obviously my participation in sports, from little league sports to college athletics to being involved in professional sports. So my mentoring program started around sports. I started a basketball camp business. Then I started a basketball league, and I started doing basketball training. And I took that training to what we called Host Drills for Skills, was the basketball training business, Hope for Fitness. We did a fitness program for younger kids in the K through 2 year old groups, or K through 2 second grade group. And then we started like, okay, we're demanding that our kids have a C or better average. Let's start doing things in the school to help them get better grades. I started going to some of the academic programs at the middle schools. And then I asked some of the teachers, if I volunteer to come out here to engage some of the students in the discussion about my memoir that I want to work on, could they get grades for that? So she didn't know. We had to talk to the principal. We got involved in that. And they goes, yeah, we'll come up with a curriculum. They'll do these things. These are the points they have to meet and the criteria they have to meet twice a week, Tuesday, Thursdays. And it blossomed into our Hoops for Drills for Skills mentoring program. And we had sponsorships for kids to come into the program. And it was just, again, felt like giving back. It was something I was giving back that was given to me.
Oh, wow. Can you share a moment when mentorship changed someone's life?
Well, I have a lot of kids that tell me that their life was changed. And I'm very appreciative of that because that was the goal. That's what we wanted to do. But as I talked to some of the young men that I've worked with over the years, I have to deal with some of the tragedies. Some of the tragedies and stuff were the things that really would always catch you and bother you. But I've had a young man who was going to drop out of school. I had the administrator tell me he had skipped like 80% of his classes. And I suspended him from the basketball program, and I suspended him from coming to our awards banquet. But the guest speaker who was going to speak at the awards banquet was already in town, staying at a hotel. I called this young man's mother because he had got suspended because he had gotten into a fight, suspended from school. I called his mother. I said, look, I'm not going to allow him to come to the awards banquet, but I want to do something else for him. And she goes, well, what do you have? And I said, well, I'm going to go have lunch with the guest speaker for our event tonight. Can I come by and pick him up and take him with this luncheon with me? Because I want him to hear what this guy's message is going to be. And she agreed to it. We went by and picked him up. And this particular speaker was a former minor league professional baseball player that was on his way to the major leagues. He was wrongfully accused of a crime that he did not commit, but it cost him 28 years of his life. He was exonerated. DNA evidence proved he didn't commit the crime. He was exonerated, and he came out, went back to college, got a bachelor's degree, started a program. He was mentoring prisoners who come out of prison. And he told this young man about how, I made a mistake with being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I didn't do anything wrong. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was skipping classes. I wasn't going to do what I was supposed to do. My mother thought I was at school. And because I was in that wrong position, I was able to get charged with a crime that I did not commit. Your actions have consequences. That young man, again, for that school year, he was not going to play basketball again, but he went on to high school. He graduated. I remember watching him walk and graduate. I was so proud of him. And I think he did not play basketball anymore, but he went on to play small college football. And it was a story where, we probably saved his life because he was thinking about dropping out of school. He had skipped 80% of his class. I'm like, what are you showing up for, lunch and gym? I mean, what classes are you attending to skip 80% of your classes? But it was a happy ending in the end because he ended up graduating from high school. Very, very proud of him. And I remember seeing him the day of graduation, and I was like, I told you could do this. I told you could do this. And he gave me a hug, and just very, very, I was very proud of that.
Man, see, moments like that, I'm sure that was a great moment, but it's moments like that we need to captivate because, when you make that kind of impact, I mean, you're right, you probably did save his life. Save his life.
He said that. He said that to me, and I told him, I was like, okay, don't give me too much credit because you had to go to school. You had to decide to change your life. I'm glad I was a catalyst for that and help you out with it, but you had to do the work. And that's the important thing about the accountability. If I'm going to hold you accountable for actions that you do that are wrong, I'm going to give you credit for the actions that you do that are right as well. You did that work. I appreciate being a catalyst. I appreciate you acknowledging it, but you did that work and you changed your life. And I'm very proud of it.
Mhm. So, how do you approach mentoring young Black men?
I was a young Black man, so I tell them that story. I told them the story about my brother. I tell them about my beginnings and where we came from and how we started out. And a lot of times, I have conversations, and a lot of times they'll notice your watch, or they'll notice the vehicle you're driving. Oh man, you're driving a BMW. They'll notice those particular things, and you're like, okay, why are you drawn to that? You know what I did to get them? Because that's what you should be drawn to. It's the process.
Yep.
It's the effort you have to put in to get those things.
Yep.
Be drawn to the process, not the finished product.
Right. What role does faith or spirituality play in your mentorship?
Yes. Because I deal with so many different youth, I try not to tell someone what belief they should have, but they should certainly understand that we're not doing the things we do by ourselves. There's a higher power, and whether your religion is Christianity or something else, believe in the faith that you have. I grew up in a Baptist church with my family, so we was in church on Bible study, Sunday school. We were ushers in the church. We sung in the choir. If you can believe it or not, I did sing in the choir. We attended the services. We attended when Christmas came. We were in church at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Ooh.
So there was a lot of times, growing up in the church. So that was our background. That may not be everyone's background, and it may be a different religion. But that faith and stuff is the backbone and your foundation to who you're going to be as a person. So I always encourage people to not forget where they came from, what they were taught.
Ooh, you mentioned that about that church. Boy.
Brought back memories.
Oh my God, we had to go to church 7 days a week. And I got to the point. I said, "Why are we going to church every day?"
Every day. Yes.
Oh.
And the holidays, before you open any Christmas present, you went to church.
Yes.
5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
So yes.
So how do you build trust with the communities you serve?
By being consistent. I mean, again, even starting the basketball program we did here, I was told that you can't do it. And where I came from, middle school basketball was pretty popular. It was normal. Here in this area, there was no middle school basketball. And I was like, okay, I would like to give it a try. And it was like, yeah, but you're not going to be able to get it. You're not going to be able to do it. And I was like, but I want to try. But yeah, but you can't do it. It's like, okay, you told me that already, but I'm going to try. And then there was already a league here. I had a different way of how I wanted it to go. I wanted to basically not reinvent the wheel, but mimic high school sports. Varsity team in the school, a junior varsity team, and a girls team in every middle school in Howard County. And we had 16 middle schools here. So the goal was to put 3 teams in each of those schools. We didn't quite get to that point. When I left the league after about 6 years, I think I was running the league. I think we had 68 teams.
Oh, wow.
And so we did again, I had a lot of parents mad at me about the requirements to play, which was C average was minimum. You only had to play the school that you attended. Things that I thought were just normal things that would happen everywhere. Some people didn't agree with that. But it was consistency across the board with everyone and all the players, all of the schools. I did a basketball camp at the MCI Center, which is where the Washington Wizards play at. I remember the look on some of the kids' face walking down the bleachers to walk on the court. Some they had seen on TV, and now they're walking out there, and they're going to play on the court with some of their favorite players are playing at. It was life changing for some of them. Like, oh my God, I'm actually playing on the court where John Wall played at, where Kevin Durant played at, and I'm actually walking on that same court. I have kids now who graduated from high school, and they come back and tell me that was still like the best memory of their life in basketball. So, we try to, again, be consistent.
What's one initiative you're most proud of?
Initiative that I'm most proud of. I think the initiative, again, I went to Orlando this year to speak at what they call the Man Up Summit at my old high school. It was my first time being back on campus since I had graduated from high school. And the program there is to encourage young people to be high achievers. And that initiative and stuff, from my perspective, was to bring aviation there and to talk to them about the fact that don't let the challenge be a deterrent for pursuing an aviation career, because so many of you have what it takes. Some of you are dance, some of you are in sports, some of you are artists. That's the mindset, which we call the growth mindset, that allows you to be a successful air traffic controller, or aviation professional, because you have to understand that difference and that challenge of getting better every day. And when you're pursuing something in arts or sports, that's that mindset as well. So that initiative, dealing and being involved with the Man Up Summit, helping students at the school where I attended all those years ago, something I'm very proud of.
How do you stay grounded while doing emotionally demanding work?
Remembering where I came from. I do the work I do because I'm passionate about it. I enjoy helping kids. I enjoy learning and developing professionally and stuff in my own development. I like to be an inspiration for other people, and therefore, I don't think what I'm doing makes me special. I'm just giving back.
Mhm. What does empowerment mean to you in practice?
In practice, empowerment is giving you the freedom to make a choice about doing what you want to do without limitations or obstacles stopping you from doing that. I'm empowered to do that now, speaking with you, having an opportunity to speak to an audience I haven't spoken to before, having them hear my message. And again, not special, just like you.
Mm, wow. How do you measure impact in your community efforts?
For me, that impact, because I've done so much stuff with basketball, I've looked at the fact that I have two former players in the NBA. I have more than a dozen kids in Division I colleges, some of them at Notre Dame, at Duke University, at University of Maryland, Townsend University. I have athletes that have accomplished things that probably many of them thought they could not accomplish. That to me is impactful. I know the stories I was telling them had some impact because they achieved what they wanted to achieve.
What's your vision for the next generation of leaders?
Um, for more of them to look like us, that's my vision. I want a diverse, successful, innovative, and exciting aviation profession to continue to expand, and the imaginations that we have for space. I want to have that real world Star Trek experience happen, and it's inclusive. It includes people from different backgrounds and generational, stuff, and not just one set of one group of people. I believe that our diversity and stuff and our differences and stuff don't just make a divide. It makes us unique, and I think we should embrace that. We should encourage it, and I really try to make sure our kids understand that you're not less than. You can achieve whatever you want.
Mm. So when we chatted, I asked you. I told you we do Black History 365, and I asked you who was the most influential person or persons in your life, in your career. You mentioned to me Malcolm X and the Tuskegee Airmen.
Mhm.
Can you tell us why do Malcolm X and the Tuskegee Airmen resonate so deeply with you?
Two different reasons. Malcolm X was actually the autobiography of Malcolm X was the first full large scale book that I've actually ever read, and I read it twice. It was his just defiance in the face of racism and death threats, his ability to overcome the fact that people didn't think he was not. He started out obviously as a petty criminal, but he was bigger than that. He was more than that. And so the petty criminal stuff didn't define him. He overcame those challenges. He became a teacher. And again, whatever your religion is, he became a teacher of men and women. He educated himself. He was committed to learning and studying. And he wasn't afraid to tell people something was wrong just because they would not like him for saying it. I was inspired by that. The Tuskegee Airmen, I have P-51 airplanes, which is the plane they flew in World War II, all over my office and my desktop and my computer. It's because they did not let obstacles stop them. When they would go take a test for certification, they would change the standard for them. You know what? We said it was 80, now it's 85. We said it was 85, now it's 90. So they go, okay, we'll just score 100. Now what's the score? So the ability to say, you know what? You're going to put these obstacles in front of us. We're going to overachieve. We're going to accomplish all of them anyway. And they became one of the most successful flying groups in World War II in the history of the United States military. They didn't let obstacles stop them. That's motivational and inspiring for me, and I love that story.
Mm-hmm. What lessons from Malcolm X have shaped your personal philosophy?
Can I come back to that? Because I got somebody coming up in me right now, knocking on my door. I'm going to stop him from knocking. Give me 1 second. About that, Mr. King. I hope you didn't hear that. That was an Amazon package guy. He was just buzzing. I'm like, oh my God, stop. So I hope you didn't hear that too much. Malcolm X philosophy that resonated with me the most was, again, to be proud of who you are, to be proud of yourself, awareness of who you are, your ancestors are and where you came from. Do not let someone define you because of their stereotypes of who you are. That philosophy of being proud of who you are has stood out to me, and to this day.
How do the Tuskegee Airmen inspire your work in aviation?
They were at the forefront. They were, again, they're part of that, let's erase history position right now and today as well. Fortunately, someone smarter decided to get in and step in and change that narrative. But the Tuskegee Airmen were the first Black flying group, so aviators in the United States Air Force in 1940s. Their achievements and their accomplishments were so outstanding that they had to be recognized. They could not be buried and hidden away. Unfortunately, Lee Archer, one of the Tuskegee Airmen, who should have been an ace because of his number of kills in World War II, never lived to receive that honor. I hope that he receives it posthumously, and he's able to receive that. But their achievements and their accomplishments were so outstanding that they continue to be, that's the standard bearers. That's what I want to achieve. I want to be that outstanding in what I do. Whatever that is that you're doing, the goal is to be outstanding.
Do you see parallels between their courage and your own journey?
I do not, because again, there was no standard for them. They set the standard. They were the first. So there was no one they could look up to and look back at and say, this is what I wanted to do, and I'm going to follow that standard. I have that because of them. So I have something to follow. I have a goal to shoot for. I have achievements to look forward to or look up to. So therefore, what they did was historic. What I'm doing is hopefully creating a legacy of this should be normal.
What does Black excellence mean to you?
Tuskegee Airmen. Again, I think that we're And I love to watch some of the award ceremonies that we have for ourselves, because our excellence should not be determined by someone else. We have the capabilities and stuff of determining what is excellence for us. And again, not a lower standard. Excellence is excellence. You have to be outstanding. Your achievements have to be outstanding. Your work ethic has to be outstanding. So Black excellence is not less than, it's not minimum, it's not quote unquote DEI giving you something. It's accomplishing things based on hard work, dedication, and commitment to a goal or a challenge that you set yourself up for and you set out to achieve, and you accomplish it. And you do it with an outstanding work ethic and an outstanding achievement. That's excellence. There's no shortcuts.
So, how do you honor Black history in your daily life?
I try to pursue for my professional life and my personal life, I try to be outstanding. I try to be a person of good character, of substance. I challenge myself to be an achiever, and I hold myself to account to the things I do or don't do. Again, not perfection, just high standards and accomplishments and achievements. And that's in my work ethic. That's in my relationships personally and professionally. That's in my work efforts at my job. The efforts I put forth into doing a book or writing a book, preparing for speaking with you today. Everything has to be to a certain standard. I'm not going to do it unless I'm going to do it at the very best of my abilities and stuff. That's honoring the sacrifice that people who no longer live with us, are no longer here with us today, sacrifice. That's the standard that Tuskegee Airmen set, that Dr. King set, Malcolm X, and other people like them. That's the standards of excellence. I try to live by that.
So, what stories from Black history do you think are still untold?
I'm sure there are lots of stories about Black history that are untold, and it's unfortunate because, again, history should be something to learn from. We should learn lessons from them, not be ashamed of something that we cannot change. It is what it is. But I'm sure there are history stories that we don't know about. There are things I started looking at a map of the Civil War. Just got a book of the Civil War maps and how the regions were changing as they were challenging the South to get rid of slavery or to end slavery, and how the Civil War came about. And I just know that there's so many stories of people who were heroic, who look like us, that have never been told.
So, when you just think about that, and when you mentioned that part about the South and the slavery and so forth, when it comes to that part of the Civil War and it comes to the state of Georgia, Georgia was very vital. Atlanta was very vital in that whole situation. When you look at the situation with the Tuskegee Airmen and you think about Malcolm X, how do you think the fusing of those situations combined could totally have changed all of those times coming forward?
From the Civil War to the World War II to Malcolm? Well, I think it was a progression, obviously. I mean, time changed because during the time of the Tuskegee or Civil War, that's a deeper conversation. But
right.
from supposedly freeing the slaves with a strategic effort to win the war, not necessarily claiming those people are equal to us. But those people had to overcome so much because they were not given a foundation. There was no reading. There was no writing. There was no land ownership. There was no, here's restoration for what we've done to you for the past years. Just go. You're free now. So where do you go? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. What bootstraps? They weren't given anything. So, but they overcame it still. So that's still overcoming something with a whole lot less than all the rest of us have now to overcome challenges with. Progressing that to World War II, where Tuskegee Airmen were now being challenged. They were actually being put in situations to fail. Mm-hmm. The goal was to prove that people who look like us could not fight in wars. People like us could not be a successful fighting pilot, that we didn't have the internal fortitude or the courage or the smarts or the intelligence to fly an airplane during a war. The goal was they would fail, but they highly achieved and they didn't fail. Malcolm X's position and what he did was coming and overcoming white people making us second-class citizens. And sometimes he had to push back on that violence with his rhetoric that was violent, because he was being attacked with violence. And I mean, I'm not saying that I don't agree with Dr. King's message of nonviolence, but it always resonated with me more. Malcolm X is that eye for eye. If you put your hands on me, I'm gonna put my hands back on you. That always resonated more with me. I'm not looking for violence. I don't want to go out there and hurt anyone. But if you hurt me, I'm not gonna stand there and just take it because I'm a better person.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to stop because I'm going to make you stop.
Right.
Not because I'm going to take so much punishment you get tired and you walk away. I don't think that's the way I would have pursued that. And again, I guess there's obviously, Dr. King is one of the greatest people who ever lived. And his philosophy, I guess, that he adopted from Gandhi of nonviolence had its place and it worked in certain instances. But just like even living in the society we live in today, I mean, can you imagine walking past someone that's going to beat you in your head with something and your position is, I'm not going to fight them back? I don't think that would be very successful. I don't think that would be very successful.
Definitely not your ring.
Right. So I think it's really important that we understand that it doesn't make me a bad person to want to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know, today we face so much violence in the world we live in today, and a lot of it is self-inflicted, and that's something that we shouldn't run away from either. I see people and I have that conversation with them, like, don't get me wrong, I understand the obstacles that we have in front of us, but understand that we're one of those obstacles as well. We're doing a lot of damage to ourselves, and we got to recognize that, we got to acknowledge that, and we got to do better.
Yes. How do you use your platform to educate others about Black legacy?
Well, if I'm dealing with a group of youth, because I'm actually speaking to them, anytime I actually have an occasion to speak with people, I always intertwine that history into my speaks, because or my speeches, my presentations, because that's the foundation to where I'm coming from. So I have to always put that in there, and I try to call on that spirit of saying, imagine if someone 200 years ago would have decided that, you know what, people 200 years coming from now, they're not worth it. I'm just going to lay down. Mm-hmm. Where would we be at today if they did that? So I take that personally and saying that sacrifice requires me to sacrifice today and to give back, to keep that legacy alive, to speak about it, to intertwine it with my messages or whatever in my books, what have you, to the fact that, we're bigger than what some people think we are.
Yes.
And we have to stand up to that. And we have to be able to understand that at the same time, we cannot ignore our own violence towards ourselves. True. That part is really bothering me, because a lot of people in positions and stuff, they get upset when we talk about that. And I'm like, look, I don't have a problem talking about things that are happening, people who oppose us and people who want to belittle us and stereotype us. I have no problem with talking about those people, but don't get upset when I talk about us, because my responsibility is more to what we're doing to ourselves. That's what I want to impact more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What message would you share with young people about their heritage?
Remember how rich it is, and remember the struggles that we've overcome. And think about it in the sense of imagining walking out the door with blindness on your eyes and walking around for a week, and then the blindness get taken off, you don't know where you are, and then becoming successful. Because that's what our ancestors did. I'll tell them to remember that.
If you could sit down with Malcolm X or a Tuskegee Airman, what would you ask them?
Wow. I thought about that a lot, because those are people I would want to sit down with. What made you so courageous? If I'm speaking to Malcolm X, where did that courage come from? And I know he would probably answer me from God. His faith was very, very strong, and he believed he was speaking the message of God. And when he evolved in his religious belief and he made his pilgrimage to Mecca, he saw all people working together in diversity in our religion and our beliefs. And the fact that if we have that, we're stronger together. And I would ask him, but what gave you that courage? Because at that time frame, not getting off the sidewalk could get us killed. Imagine pointing your finger at someone who didn't look like you and telling them, don't call me boy.
Ooh.
The Tuskegee Airmen, I know they were driven by the fact that I know there's a scene in one of the movies that one of the actors was talking about. There's no greater conflict within me. How do I feel about my country? And how does my country feel about me? Because they were getting treated worse than the slaves or the prisoners that they was imprisoning during the war. Yet they still had to go put their lives on the line to fight for a country that treated them like second-class citizens. How do you do that? What's inside of you to say, you know what? I'm going to go home tomorrow. I can't walk my daughter to school. I can't sit in a restaurant and eat a meal. But I'm going to go put my life on the line for this country. How do you do that? I would like to ask them that question. That had to be tough, because if I win this war, I'm going to go back home and I'm not going to be able to sit at the counter and eat a meal. I'm not going to be able to drink out of a certain water fountain. I can't sit in the front of a bus. Those are the conditions they were still living in when they was fighting and dying for the country. How do you do that? I would like to ask them that question.
So, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement that you have for our audience, including how they can connect with you on social media, how they can connect with you on your website, they can learn about your books, all of that good stuff?
Okay. I think you put the website and everything in the chat box, correct? So I do check my own social media accounts. I go to them. Although I do have an assistant that does some of the posting, I certainly check my chat boxes and my social media. So if you're contacting me, you're going to get a response directly from me. As far as words of wisdom, I don't know if I have any wisdom. I try to be authentic. I try to speak by the things that I believe in. And if there's something that I'm not knowledgeable about, I don't have a problem with becoming more knowledgeable about a particular topic. I have no problem with putting in extra work to learn. And I think my mom used to always say that to us as kids: hard work has never killed anybody. So I have no problem with being hardworking in every aspect of my life. It's the message that I think everyone should have, in particular when you're a group of people who are facing an uphill battle, when some folks want to change your life back to the 1800s.
Well, I want to thank you again for being here, because this was truly enlightening. And, of course, I knew it would be a great conversation. But that just tells me that when you are here in February of Black History Month, that it's going to be even better.
I'm absolutely looking forward to it.
And I want to just thank you because, again, these are some things, especially on this wonderful Friday evening, that I think our audience, for one, need to hear, but also in just seeing someone such as yourself that's an aeronautical analyst, that there's not many people that look like you in that space, but you more than fit into that space because you are doing big things there. And that's just hands off. That's just, well, not hands off, but that's a shout out to you, because you too are doing what you have to do and you are achieving. And that's the thing that makes us so proud, especially here, because as I talked to you earlier, what I'm going to start doing is, start to, introducing people to our heroes. That is people like yourself, not these folk that the mainstream media done post up here to look like something that we don't know what those people are. They're doing whatever, but at any rate, that's more power to them. Not berating them, but that's not where we are. Where we are is dealing with the real heroes and the real people. And I think for what you do, this is definitely part of what real people should not only get the opportunity to see and to know, but to also know that you have done everything that anybody could ever think of as possible. And look at where you are right now. I mean, that's just proudness, And I'm sorry, I know that, we ain't been too long, got a chance to chop it up and get to know each other. But I'm going to tell you, I'm proud as hell of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really am. And so just when we put that out there, for people to know who you are, we're going to shout that from the rooftop, because everybody need to know, hey, look at Dr. Worthington.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate it so much. And again, I appreciate your audience and the platform and the opportunity to speak tonight. And I hope someone took some positive messages out of it, and I'm encouraging them and stuff. Again, the social media reach outs and the contacts on my book, they're all available online currently. And again, I do respond back to my messages from my anyone who's reaching out to me. You're certainly going to get a message directly back from me, and not just some computer generated one. So thanks for having me, Mr. King.
Yes. And also, for those of you that are out there that are watching on the YouTube channel, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and get all the notifications, where you can get all of the shows live, as well as going back and watch all of our previous shows that we have done. Also, I ask that each and every last one of you please go out and join the community, because when you join the community, we are creating networking events. That's what we're working up to. We want to make those things be about as big as possible, where not only will you be able to network with others, you'll also be able to do your postings for things that you're looking for and just meet different people. You'll also be able to watch the show there. But also, for all of our guests, that is where they are going to have to go in order to get their copies of our monthly magazine. Also, when you guys do that, I just ask that, we just please try to do this about as best as possible, because as we're about community and we want to grow, we want to make sure that we're about as best as what we can do and make it happen. Thank you, Dr. Worthington. Thank you, everybody, for watching. You all have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next week on America in Black and White, where we will continue to color conversations on America's canvas. Y'all have a great